I used to think loyalty would always lead to love. That if you showed up enough, sacrificed enough, someone would eventually see you. That was before I opened that manila folder on a cold October afternoon in Salem, Oregon. That day, I dropped by my parents' home, something I did nearly every Saturday. I'd spent the last 10 years supporting them, paying bills, fixing leaks, repainting the porch, even covering the roof last winter. That house, an old red brick 2-story with ivy crawling up the sides, felt more like mine than anyone else's. My mother, Karen, wasn't good with computers, so I often helped her sort through mail, pay property taxes, or digitize old files. "Hey, could you take a look at this for me?" she asked, handing over a disorganized pile of documents before returning to her rose garden in the backyard. I sat at the dining table, the wood still nicked from when I was a teenager doing homework there, and flipped through the stack out of habit. And that's when I saw it. A thick, cream-colored envelope marked in bold, estate plan and last will. I froze, then told myself I was only checking to make sure things were in order. I'd always been the one who held things together when no one else did. But when I turned to the section labeled asset distribution, something in me shattered. Everything, the house, the car, the savings, even her wedding ring, was listed under my younger brother, Tyler's name. My name, Evelyn, didn't appear once. Not even a sentence acknowledging my existence. Just a generic line. "We love both our children." My hands trembled. I gripped the document until my knuckles turned white. Every memory came flooding back. The double shifts I pulled to help cover the mortgage, the nights I drove through freezing rain to deliver Mom's prescriptions, the weekends I spent crawling under the house fixing old pipes. Every act of love suddenly felt erased by a signature. I heard the screen door creak. Mom's light steps approached behind me. "Evelyn, did you find the bank statement?" I stood slowly, the will in hand. My voice was calm, but too calm. "Is this real?" She looked at the document, then at me, her expression stiffening. "Well, Evelyn, what does this mean?" I asked. "That I don't matter? That years of sacrifice get me... what? Silence?" Just then, my dad, Gerald, walked in from the living room with a mug of black coffee. He looked at me like I was overreacting to a headline on the news. "You don't need to make a big deal out of this," he said. "You're doing just fine. Tyler's still figuring things out." I let out a hollow laugh. "He's 30. He hasn't held a job for more than 3 months. He lives off streaming and doesn't even pay his own phone bill. Meanwhile, I've been your emergency fund, your handyman, your caregiver. And you decided I deserved nothing." Neither of them answered. I placed the will back on the table, like laying down the final proof of where I stood, and walked out. No one stopped me. No one even tried. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel hurt. I just felt nothing. A kind of emptiness that felt like truth. 2 weeks passed. No calls, no messages. Just the sound of my own silence, echoing in a space that used to be filled with their needs. I didn't return to that house. I didn't check in. I told myself if they had even a flicker of regret or awareness, they'd reach out, but they didn't. Instead, what broke the silence was a text from Dad. "Evelyn, the mortgage is due Friday. Can you send the payment soon?" That was it. No mention of what happened. No apology. No recognition that I'd been completely erased from their future. Just a request, as if I were a bill on their monthly checklist. I stared at the message for a long time, then replied with the same cold simplicity they'd offered me. "I think Tyler can handle it. After all, the house is his now, right?" I hit send and didn't wait for a reply. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up again. This time it was Mom. "Evelyn, don't do this. We need to talk." But I didn't answer. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. What replaced the hurt was something colder, sharper, a kind of clarity that comes after the last string snaps. For so many years, I believed my role as the responsible one would be rewarded, not with money, but with recognition, with love, with respect. But the truth was now undeniable. I wasn't seen as a daughter. I was seen as a solution. 3 days later, a message came from Tyler. "You're overreacting. Mom and Dad didn't mean it like that. You've always been the strong one. I'm just not." I sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through his words. The same kitchen I'd cooked in for them after surgeries, holidays, storms. I typed back slowly, each word slicing through years of enabling. "Then prove you deserve what they gave you. Start by paying the mortgage." No response. A week passed in silence. Until Monday morning, while I was sipping coffee and planning my work schedule, my phone buzzed again. A transfer request, $2,900 sent from my mother's account. No explanation, no message, just a cold demand for money, like always. I hit decline without hesitation. Minutes later, the phone rang. I let it ring until the fourth buzz, then declined the call. A message followed. "Evelyn, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline?" I closed my eyes, exhaled, and replied, "Because it's no longer my responsibility. Ask Tyler." For the first time in my life, I felt something shift. I wasn't the safety net anymore. I wasn't the backup plan. I wasn't the one patching cracks no one else wanted to fix. 3 days later, Tyler texted again. "You're so selfish. Didn't you always say family comes first?" I reread it twice before replying. Family is built on fairness and respect, not on using someone until they're empty. No more replies came after that. But for once, the silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like relief. The quiet beginning of a life where I finally came first. That weekend, I cleaned my apartment in a way I hadn't done in months. Not out of obligation, but out of a quiet sense of finality. I threw out old mail, vacuumed behind the sofa, scrubbed every corner. And when I finished, I opened my banking app, went to the joint mortgage account, and requested to have my name removed. It wasn't anger driving me anymore. It was closure. After that, I called every utility company I'd been silently managing for years, electricity, water, internet, and canceled each automatic payment linked to my card. Then I opened the Notes app on my phone and deleted the long list of monthly reminders. Trash day, meter readings, tax dates. For so long, my life had been one long to-do list of tasks for a house that didn't have space for my name in its future. When I was done, I sat at my tiny dining table with a slice of chocolate cake from the bakery down the street. It was the same kind I'd passed on for birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays, because there was always something more urgent to spend on. That night, I bought it just for me. No occasion, no one else to feed. Just me and the silence. It was the best thing I'd tasted in years, and I slept, really slept, for the first time in over a decade. No dings from payment apps. No 11 p.m. texts asking for help. No mental countdown of which bill needed covering next. Just uninterrupted rest. I even signed up for an online watercolor class. Something I'd bookmarked 5 times but never dared start because they might need me. But now, no one needed me. And it finally felt like freedom, not failure. Then the knocks started coming again, but not from self-reflection. From chaos. Early that week, Mom texted, "Evelyn, your brother doesn't know how to pay the internet. Bill, can you walk him through it?" I didn't reply. 2 days later. "The landline's been disconnected. Tyler says he can't log in. What do we do?" I read the message while standing in front of my bookshelf. I reached up, pulled down the old green notebook I'd used for years, the one filled with passwords, account numbers, customer service notes, my entire life's worth of instructions for them, and I closed it. I didn't open the page, didn't send a screenshot. I just slid it back onto the shelf. I wasn't their safety net anymore. 3 days later, another message came, this time more desperate. Are you seriously going to let the power get shut off? I replied simply, no. I'm going to let everyone take responsibility for their own choices. And then I silenced the thread. For years, I thought strength meant never letting things fall apart. But now I know. It takes far more strength to step away and watch people face the consequences they spent a lifetime avoiding. Wasn't doing it to punish them. I was doing it to finally protect myself. It had been nearly a month since I cut the cord. The messages slowed. The requests thinned. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next disaster. I felt still, anchored. Until one morning, my phone rang. The caller ID was unfamiliar, but the voice on the other end wasn't. Evelyn, it's Lorraine, your parents' neighbor. I hate to bother you, but Karen asked if I knew anyone buying homes. She mentioned they're having trouble. I thought, you should know. I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there, not with satisfaction, not even with sadness, just with a quiet kind of fatigue, the kind that settles in when you've held something heavy for too long and finally set it down. I didn't reply to Mom's last message. I didn't ask what was going wrong. I already knew. The house I'd kept standing for a decade was finally reflecting the truth. Without someone patching the cracks, it was collapsing. 2 days later, Tyler showed up at my door. I hadn't seen him in person since the will. He looked smaller. Somehow, shoulders hunched beneath a hoodie, a stack of documents in his arms, eyes darting like he was preparing for rejection. And he was right to. Just 5 minutes, he said. Please. I just need help understanding the mortgage terms. I don't know what half of this means. I crossed my arms. What about the inheritance? I asked, like I was asking about the weather. It's tied up, he muttered. If I withdraw now, there's a penalty. I didn't think it would spiral this fast. I raised a brow. But you signed for everything, no hesitation. Just assumed it would work out. I thought Mom and Dad had it under control, he said, almost too quiet to hear. Exactly. You thought, like always. He didn't argue. He didn't defend. Just stood there, face hollow, waiting for me to clean up what he'd spilled. Stepped out, pulled the door closed behind me. This is the lesson, I said flatly. No one grows if someone's always there to catch them. You're really going to let them lose the house? He asked, eyes wide with disbelief. I'm not letting anything happen, I answered. They made choices. Now they live with them. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the hallway. No excuses left, no rescuer in sight. 3 days later, I ran into Ben, a classmate turned realtor, at a networking mixer downtown. We chatted about art, and I was just about to mention my photo project when he paused. Wait, is your parents' house on Vine Street? I nodded. He shook his head slightly. Someone on my team flagged it. High foreclosure risk, old wiring, roof issues. Looks like it's been neglected for years. You okay? I smiled faintly. I'm fine. They're figuring things out. And I meant it. Not with bitterness. Not with pride. Just with the calm of someone who'd finally stepped off the merry-go-round and realized they never had to climb back on again. That night, I got home, dropped my keys on the table, and opened my laptop. An email caught my eye. It was from a nonprofit I used to volunteer with during college. They were launching a mentorship program to help seniors manage housing debt and avoid foreclosure. They were looking for mentors with real-world experience. I stared at the message for a long time, not because I felt guilty, but because it felt Right. I clicked apply. Not for Karen. Not for Gerald. Not for Tyler. For me. For the version of me who'd spent years keeping a house from falling apart without ever being told thank you. For the woman who'd finally learned to stop bleeding for people who never offered a bandage in return. That Saturday, after teaching a photography class at the local community center, I pulled into my apartment complex expecting a quiet night with chamomile tea and my latest photo, edits. But there it was, the silver minivan, the same one I had co-signed for 4 years ago, the same one I had legally transferred to my father last year, thinking it would be my last gesture of trust. Karen and Gerald stood by the building entrance. Tyler stood a few feet behind, arms crossed, eyes on the ground. I said nothing as I approached. I just stopped a few steps away, arms folded. Karen was the first to speak. Her voice trembled. Evelyn, I'm sorry. We didn't know it would get this bad. The bank is reassessing the house next week. Gerald looked older than I remembered, defeated. We made a mistake, he said softly. But your mother, she's not strong enough to handle this. I looked him dead in the eye. Then why did you decide I wasn't worth including when you made the will? He dropped his gaze. We thought you'd be fine. You've always been the strong one. But Tyler gets to fail, gets to be forgiven, gets everything. I turned to my brother. No denial, no excuses, nothing, just silence. I took a breath. I gave away my youth, I said. I gave away my time, my savings, my sleep, my peace of mind. And in return, you gave me erasure. Karen's eyes filled with tears. We didn't know it would come to this. Can't you help? Just for a few months, I shook my head. Not in anger, but in finality. I'm not saying no because I can't help, I said. I'm saying no because if I do, nothing will change. You'll go right back to pretending you never needed to. Tyler finally spoke, his voice small. I didn't think it would get this complicated. I thought it just needed time. I looked at him, really looked. I didn't walk away fast, I said. I warned. I waited. I hoped. But you all chose to ignore that. Karen's voice was a whisper now. So this is really the end? I met her eyes. The woman I used to bring soup to when she was sick. The one I drove to the ER. The one I once trusted with my whole heart. No, I said. It ended the moment you chose who mattered, and who didn't. And with that, I stepped inside. Alone. Whole. I didn't cry after they left. I didn't stand by the window wondering if they'd turn around. I didn't second-guess myself or scroll through old photos hoping for something to soften the ache. There was no ache. There was only quiet. And, this time, the silence didn't feel like something missing. It felt like something restored. I thought maybe, just maybe, they would take that final conversation as the end. I thought the truth, laid bare, might earn me the dignity of distance. But I had overestimated the humility of people who had grown comfortable taking. A week later, Olivia, a co-worker at the Arts Center, messaged me. Evelyn, are you on Facebook? You need to check your mom's page. She's posting some wild things. I hadn't logged in for months. I rarely used it. But something told me I needed to see for myself. I typed in Karen Baker. Her profile loaded, and the first post that appeared made my stomach twist. A photo of the house, captioned, "It's heartbreaking when your own daughter abandons her family. During our darkest hour, after everything we sacrificed for her." 80 shares, dozens of comments, people offering sympathy, some accusing me outright. Ungrateful, cold, cruel. I scrolled further. A post from Dad. "We always thought Evelyn loved her family. but when we needed her, she disappeared without a word. Then one from Tyler. Some people are only kind when they're the ones in control. When we asked for help, she chose silence. That's what strength looks like now, I guess. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stared at the screen, exhausted. When guilt stopped working, they'd turn to shame. Public shame. As if they still had the right to control the story. But they forgot one thing. I wasn't silent anymore. That night, I opened my own Facebook. No background color, no emojis. Just the truth. I uploaded a photo of the will with Tyler's name as the sole beneficiary. I posted screenshots of years of utility bills, mortgage payments, and the $2,900 transfer request from my mother. And then, one final sentence. My silence wasn't consent. I was waiting for the right moment to tell the truth. This is that moment. I hit post. Within minutes, the comments came pouring in. Wait, Evelyn, you did all of this? I knew. Something didn't add up. You've always been the responsible one. They tried to frame you. That's disgusting. People I hadn't spoken to in years reached out. Former teachers, neighbors, even one of Dad's old coworkers. 2 days. Later, my mother deleted her post. Dad deactivated his account. Tyler changed his profile picture to a black and white flower. The same dramatic move he always made when things spiraled. I didn't respond. I didn't post again. I didn't need to. Justice doesn't always come with apologies. Sometimes, it comes with silence, and this time, the silence meant they finally understood. I wasn't theirs to control anymore. Since the night I posted the truth, everything had gone still. Not the silence of tension or resentment. Not the kind that leaves you waiting for the next shoe to drop. This was different. This was the silence of acceptance. Not theirs, but mine. I hadn't heard from Karen, Gerald, or Tyler since that wave of damage control. No more texts, no more missed calls, not even a passive-aggressive quote post. It was as if they had finally realized I was no longer on the hook for their chaos. And strangely, it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like peace. For the first time in over a decade, I was living only for me. Every Monday, I headed to the art center to teach my photography class for high school students. Watching them hold a camera for the first time, seeing the wonder in their eyes, it reminded me of what it meant to look at life with curiosity again. Not duty, not guilt, but simple wonder. In the evenings, I signed up for a video editing course, small dream I'd shelved for years, because someone always needed something first. I wasn't the emergency contact anymore, and that freedom. It didn't feel selfish. It felt earned. I went on slow walks at dusk. I baked small desserts on Sundays and posted them on Instagram without wondering if someone would call me fake or self-absorbed. I made new friends. People who didn't know me as the girl who held her family together, who didn't expect me to be anything but present. And across town, the house on Vine Street, their house, started appearing on real estate listings. Friend of mine, Marcus, now a realtor, texted me, "Evelyn, just saw your parents' house listed, asking $390,000. Roof and wiring flagged as issues. No offers yet." I wasn't surprised. There was no one to fix the faulty water heater anymore. No one to patch drywall or argue with contractors. No one to answer emails, organize the bills, or run out at 9 p.m. for emergency light bulbs. That house had stood because I held it up, and now it looked exactly like what it had become, neglected and hollow. A week later, Lorraine, the elderly neighbor, called to check in. "I just wanted to say hi, dear," she said warmly. "Oh, and I noticed Tyler moved back in with your parents. He's doing the grocery runs now. Doesn't look too happy, if I'm being honest." I smiled gently, sipping my coffee. Years ago, that news would have gutted me, would have had me worrying, planning, jumping in to fix everything again. Now, I just shrugged. Maybe this was what Tyler needed. To stand in the wreckage he once thought someone else would always clean up. Maybe they all did. I wasn't glad they were struggling. But I was glad it wasn't my responsibility anymore. For the first time in 10 years, my savings account was growing. I booked a fall trip to Seattle to photograph the changing leaves. I placed a deposit on a semi-pro camera I used to consider too indulgent. And I started caring for myself the way I once cared for everyone else. Not out of guilt, not for approval, just because I finally could. As the leaves in Salem began turning amber and gold, I found myself walking with a camera slung over my shoulder more often than not. I started documenting small moments, light streaming through raindrops on a windshield, a child's hand reaching for a leaf, the quiet curve of steam rising from a coffee cup. It wasn't for work. It wasn't for anyone else. It was for me. And something about that felt revolutionary. I even started writing again, really writing. Not reactive Facebook posts, but thoughtful entries on a small blog I titled Unwritten, Daughters. I shared what it meant to walk away from a family that only loved you when you were useful, what it took to break free from expectations so deeply woven into your identity that saying no felt like betrayal. To my surprise, the posts were shared, again and again. Strangers emailed me. Some cried. Some told me I had given words to pain they hadn't dared name. It didn't make me feel important. It made me feel understood, and that was enough. Then one rainy afternoon at my favorite cafe, just as I was editing a photo of cracked pavement with a single fallen flower, a notification pinged on my phone. It was from a real estate site I had bookmarked years ago. Price: dropped by $30,000 on property at 218 Vine Street. Owner seeking urgent sale. I tapped it out of habit. There it was. The old red brick house. The roof tiles were dark and warped. The fence paint had peeled to gray. The listing mentioned electrical issues, water damage, and a lack of recent upkeep. No surprise. That house had survived because of me, and now, without me, it was finally, telling the truth, it was tired. Just like I had been, I stared at the photo for a long time, then tapped hide notification. I didn't feel the urge to forward it. I didn't feel the need to react. I just took another sip of my coffee and smiled. Soft, steady, certain. Later that week, I walked around Liberty Lake with my new camera. The golden hour painted everything in quiet warmth. A little boy ran ahead of his mother, laughing, the leaves crunching underfoot. I snapped the photo mid-motion. The mother's laughter carried on the breeze behind him. For a brief moment, it hit me. How much of life I'd missed while carrying other people's weight. Not anymore. I used to believe family was something you could never lose. That blood alone made you worthy of love, respect, inclusion. But now, I knew better. Family isn't made of shared DNA. It's made of people who see you, who value you, people who don't need to be begged to treat you with care. I had given everything, hoping that one day I would be seen. And in the end, I was written out, of the will, of the story, of their plans. But I had written myself back in, not as their daughter, but as the author of my own piece. I never went back to that house, not once. Occasionally, I'd hear updates in passing, from a neighbor at the farmer's market, or through Marcus, who kept tabs on local listings. The house was now listed for the third time. Price lowered again. No offers. Apparently, whenever someone came to view it, Tyler tried to act like a responsible homeowner. But when buyers asked about maintenance records or repairs, he'd just smile awkwardly, because he didn't know. Because no one ever taught. Him, because someone always did it for him. That someone had been me, and I wasn't available anymore. Weeks later, A pale blue envelope showed up in my mailbox, handwritten, familiar slanted cursive I'd know anywhere. Karen. The letter was short, 3 pages. She didn't ask for money this time. She didn't mention the Facebook posts. Instead, she wrote about her sleepless nights, about the stress Gerald was under, about how things spiraled faster than we expected. She ended with one line, "I don't know how much time we have left to fix things, but if you're willing, I'm still here." I folded the letter carefully. I didn't tear it. I didn't respond either. I slid it into the drawer beneath my desk, next to old, undeveloped rolls of film and half-finished journal entries. Things that still needed time to be understood. And maybe one day, forgiven. But not today. Not because I hated them, but because I finally loved myself enough not to keep sacrificing in silence. I poured myself into the work that mattered. I held a small photo exhibit at a local cafe, framed moments from my walks, my students' progress, fleeting scenes of quiet resilience. The final photo was simple: a weathered bench in the park at sunrise, empty but warm with light. A woman came up to me afterward. She looked to be in her 50s, her eyes red-rimmed but kind. "I don't know why," she said, "but your photos, they feel like they're speaking for people who've been silent for a long time." I smiled. Because she was right. I'd spent most of my life being quiet, for peace, for acceptance, for the illusion of love. I thought if I gave enough, they'd finally choose me. But now, I had chosen myself. I'd learned to say no, without guilt. I'd learned to let people carry their own consequences. I'd learned that setting boundaries doesn't make you unkind. It makes you whole. And I'd learned not to look back. They were still my family on paper, in old photos, in muscle memory, but not in the decisions that shaped my everyday. I didn't know if there'd be a reunion, or if that letter would ever get a reply. But for once it didn't matter, because I wasn't waiting anymore. Family, I had discovered, isn't made of obligation or blood. It's made of choice, of mutual care, of being seen. And if no one else could give that to me, then I would be that family for myself.